Yeah, sorry about the mute right there, brother. Welcome to the fourth episode of Shot Nostalgia right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. I'm good old Mike Belcaster, as always, and joining me, my host with the most, man.
Live from No Sale Studios, it's the Ace of the Tavern, ACEFIELD Retro, and we are here, Season 5, Shot Nostalgia, right in the mix of 1986, covering all things Saturday night's main event. And this is honestly been such a blast, man. It's nostalgic, it's refreshing, and they're bite-sized pieces that we're biting off watching weekly, dude. It's been, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more for this season of Shot Nostalgia.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Agree with you. Every time we watch it, too. I mean, we're not weekly episodes here, so you see the quality improving. You see the actual show, like programming, improving as always. Very, very fun ride so far, man.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point that you just made right there. Jumping big chunks of time is such a different aesthetic to this season. And I think, as you said, we're seeing the growth, but we're also seeing the progression of story. And we're missing, we saw the last episode, which was so well received. And thank you guys for watching and listening to it. Episode 3, where we saw the go home show for WrestleMania 2. And then we saw the fallout on Saturday night's main event and the scope of things. And it's interesting how the product has changed. Of course, weekly progression of storylines is a much different approach than 4-pillar pay-per-views and also these tentpole events that we're seeing with Saturday night's main event. And long-term storytelling has to happen because it's got to extend over the course of many, many months.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to see too, man. Like I still trips me out when Hogan's wearing different color knee pads. When, there's so much going on, but Jake the Snake just needs to get out of the shower. We were talking about that a little bit off the air. He's loving it, man. Him and Damien, they did just like to be wet and sloppy during their promo.
We'll talk about it because that's definitely something we see in one of the episodes here. We don't have any other place they can cut an interview. Like, they had to do it in the shower. You couldn't find a brick wall that Jake Roberts and Damien could just be talking menacingly in front of. Like, there's nothing less intimidating than being in a shower. And if anything, being in your tights in the shower is just such a weird combo that, I think they could have found a better place.
It paints a good picture, though. You can picture Jake all sweaty, all wet. He's got Damien rolling around. Mean Gene's got live electronics inside the shower with him, which makes no sense because we're still in the 80s, damn it.
In the bowels of the arena, they can't find a different spot or maybe cut up to his chest. I mean, he's got to see his gear, so whatever. It just, but we'll get into that, of course. Today we're going to be reviewing 2 events, Saturday night's main event 7 from October 4th, 1986, from Richfield, Ohio, headlined by WWF World Championship on the line. Hulk Hogan defending against Paul Orndorff with Bobby Heenan in his corner. And, of course, Saturday night's main event 8, November 29th, 1986, from Los Angeles, California, headlined by the Intercontinental Championship on the line. Randy Savage with Miss Elizabeth versus Jake Roberts with the aforementioned Damien the Snake. And don't worry, we got another match here. WWF champion Hulk Hogan defending against Hercules Hernandez with Bobby Heenan in his corner. So, 2 things. Bobby Heenan, the Heenan family getting shots at the title. Hogan defending his championship back-to-back Saturday night's main event. And we get a big match for the Intercontinental Championship, which is apropos with everything that went on last week. Gunther breaking Honky Tonk Man's record. Intercontinental title is more prestigious than ever, and it's a big talking point amongst all wrestling fans. So what are your thoughts on Gunther breaking the record?
I think it's phenomenal. About time somebody dethroned Honky Tonk Man. I know it was the longest running gag, and but yeah, man, like, good for Gunther. I think he looks great, dude. I mean, I keep seeing those pictures of him, and when he was a kid, wrestling. He was very, very, very big, had the green hair, and like to see the change from then to now. And I mean, this guy looks like $1 million. He's probably one of the biggest big guys in the business right now. I mean, going across every company, he's great, but good for him, man. And good for WWE for letting him break the record. I think that speaks volumes because you have those big, historical records that are held, and seeing a young up-and-comer such as Gunther get in there, get his shit in, get that title, hold on to it for... how many days is it now? We're over 500, right? Way over 500.
It was 484, which was the record. So we're going to be, if he broke it on Thursday, we're approaching 500. So like 490 something. So
yeah, so good stuff, man.
Yeah, and I think honestly, the Intercontinental Championship, like I mentioned before, it took a long while to get back to the levels where it was here in 1986 with Randy Savage and Jake Roberts fighting over it. And of course, one of the best Intercontinental Championship matches is upcoming. WrestleMania 3, we get Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat, and was going to be, ahead of its time. I can't wait to cover the fall of that and the build to it because of the chemistry between Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat going forward. And we'll cover some of the stuff in the newsletter, what they're planning to do with Ricky Steamboat, which is pretty interesting that we found some anecdotes in the newsletter about it.
Hell yeah.
This has been a blast, dude. And Each week, we're going to go through all the Saturday Night Main Event tapings. We're going to talk about the newsletters and the contacts. And we right now have the 2 cards from 1986. There's going to be some episodes where we're going to be pivoted in both years. We're going to have 1 foot in one year and 1 foot in the other, like we did early on with 85 and 86. And of course, as we go through this path of Shot Nostalgia Season 5 with Saturday Night's Main Event, we're seeing the progression of the WWF product and the relationship and pleasing the master that is NBC and the mass audience.
It's insanity, man.
And so as we continue down this path, keep in mind, guys, that this is going to be one of those seasons that is going to be 18 episodes. So we're at episode 4 here. And of course, we have a plan for Colton to join us again. That's been a clamoring for the mullet.mania, Kentucky Waterfall himself, and we miss him greatly. He was very well received for the Time Nostalgia Pokemon Wrestling season, so it's really great to have him back. But until then, your original duo is holding it down, holding court here, talking about all things retro wrestling.
Hell yeah. I can't wait to get Colton back on. I loved the trio for Smoky Mountain, and I think he's going to add such a nice, beautiful Southern flavor to what we got going on here.
And make sure to stay tuned to his social media for this mullet competition and vote for him. Vote early and often, because we want to make sure that in-house for the Turnbuckle Tavern, we are the proud supporters of someone that won with the best mullet, and that Kentucky Waterfall is a beautiful thing. So you're voting for a good cause, and continue. I think it's Jared Allen from the Minnesota Vikings lore that is hosting this, and it's all for housing for injured soldiers and those in the military that have received some sort of injury, wounded warriors, if you will. But very, very awesome stuff, and support Colton. Beautiful mullet he has rocked, and he's ahead of the curve, man. I see mullets among young people now, and it's a different type of mullet. It's almost the Magnum TA mullet that's back in. I'm sure you're kind of seeing that in the Chicago parts, right?
Oh, absolutely, man. You got to love the Magnum TA, though. It's a beautiful mullet.
Well, let's get into the happy hour and cover this one newsletter from November 24th, 1986.
Happy hour.
They're going to kill my fun over at the WWE. Endeavor's taking over.
Well, I mean, we are recording here on Monday night, September 11th, and this is the final day of the McMahon family-owned business. Endeavor is taking over, so big boss Ariel Emanuel is going to be holding court, and things are shifting, and it may not be obvious to those watching the on-screen product, but times they are changing, Mike Belcaster.
Yeah, no, I guarantee we're going to get some good things and some bad things out of it, but I'm looking forward to being there for the ride. I haven't watched WWE in a long time. I don't know if this is going to persuade me to come back full time yet, but I'll take it with the greatest. I'll enjoy it as it is, man.
So November 24th, 1986, and as they were known then, Titan ran its NBC TV taping Saturday afternoon, 11:15 in Los Angeles. The biggest surprise of the show was that no angles were shot whatsoever. The bouts were all fairly short and predictable. So quickly here, and you mentioned before, we were without, once they're in between the WrestleManias, there's a lot of time to kill. And some of these events that are starting here, we are a while away from having the first SummerSlam, and we're close to having our first Survivor Series. But similar to AEW, where they were having a very few amount of special events on pay-per-view, WWF at this time was trying to reestablish or really pave the path of what pay-per-view would look like for professional wrestling in a big capacity, trying to appeal to a mass audience. And as we continue to mention on this show, Belcaster, is Saturday Night's Main Event was the replacement for these pay-per-views. And sometimes there was nothing to pay off, but they were doing their best to get people to tune in as an event. And I think at this point, episode 7, episode 8 of this is becoming established that it's almost appointment TV for those that love wrestling or just love entertainment at large.
Yeah, listen, Saturday Night's Main Event filled a very, very big hole in wrestling fandom. I think it being on national television, on every quarterly we'll go, on Saturday nights, weird time slot, obviously, but it fits the build, right? It's Saturday Night's Main Event, but I think having that programming on NBC every 3 months is huge deal, especially at the time. I mean, you could have gone on different channels, but NBC is like the household channel of all time, right? So Titans rocking and rolling. I think they're filling out these gaps. Even if there's little story to be told on the shows, I think it's still very important to get that programming out there just for people to consume the product, get familiar with it.
And I think a lot of the angles not being shot is because things were simmering. They're building towards things. Like even at this point in 1986, they're building towards matches at WrestleMania 3 where we're seeing the seedlings planted for Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage. We know that's going to be happening. And we saw all the way back in the early episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event, we saw some of that being planted with George Steele and Miss Elizabeth and all of that continues. You can make the argument that some of these angles that are being paid off are being billed for many years. I mean, I think back, the most famous version is the Mega Powers, and we'll, of course, cover that at length here when we get to it. But there's a lot to be said about they really stretch things out, and long-term booking is kind of an understatement for what they're doing here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they know any better than what the booking is. Like, this is a very on the surface version of pro wrestling that we're not used to. So long-term booking is probably the only way to book, especially when you have these quarterly specials. It's, you know, we're not running hourly TV yet, you know, so this is a big deal for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's also kind of a perspective-taking activity that I'm watching here, especially as we watch on a weekly basis. You're not watching WWE, but I am. But AEW, we both watch on a weekly basis, and seeing that there has to be some reason for people to tune in. There's maybe the in-between of pay-per-views. I think back to Winter's Coming. You think about St. Patrick's Day Slam. There's things in between the pay-per-views that maybe they're going to move away from when they're adding more pay-per-views to the calendar. But I think here with WWF, they get a lot of credit from the past of doing this slow burn and this long build. But I think you nailed it. They had no other choice. There was nothing else they could do, because where are these angles going? You have to let it simmer. There's nowhere else to do it. And if you're going WrestleMania to WrestleMania, that's the biggest event of the year. And there's nothing in between. Of course, when they get to SummerSlam and the Rumble and all that stuff in 88 kicks off. But at this point in 86, WrestleMania is the only place to really pay off a feud. So if you're starting something, you have to finish it somewhere in between. Or if it happens to land night after WrestleMania or that Saturday after WrestleMania or these live events, you're planting seeds that are eventually going to flower the next year. So, like, people give them a lot of credit, but they were forced to do it.
Yeah, no, I think they had no other option. But I digress. So
we have one interesting note, and I did not know this, and this was through several in attendance pointed out that the commentary you hear isn't done live. It's in a studio. So McMahon and Ventura are there, but they aren't doing live commentary. Nelson says this explains why the last tape and all those references to Adrian Adonis being hurt were made, when in fact he wasn't fired until a week after the show took place. It's because McMahon and Jetski were in a studio doing commentary well after the Cleveland show. As will be the case here, the card drew a sellout and approximately 3,000 freebies given away to ensure a full house. So before we get to attendance, and there's a lot of attendance stuff in this WWF section of the newsletter, what are your thoughts about studio tapings? We saw this happening in the sport world during the pandemic. They had the NBA was doing it in a studio. Of course, they were doing it live with it coming back to them. But we've seen New Japan World where they were doing for Wrestle Kingdom. The English commentary was done after the fact. Jim Ross most famously botching names during that time period where he was doing it. It's hard to replicate the energy of a live audience, but you don't really notice it on these shows.
No, this is done very, very well. Especially, the crowd being piped in. I think they did a really good job mixing the audio with it. Like it vibes. But I could just picture, Ventura and McMahon being in their, McMahon's mansion by the pool side in their mankinis, hanging out, watching some Saturday Night Main Events, doing commentary. It's probably great.
And this is done too on the backlog. And I know that like Remarkable Wrestling did it. And I was talking to, shout out to Kono Capucci, a cut above the rest, the owner of and promoter of Remarkable Wrestling. And he was talking about they did commentary after the fact for the Brooklyn Comic-Con show. And he talked about how hard it was to replicate the energy of feeling the live audience and talking about the energy and trying to put yourself in the place. So I give them a lot of credit here, but it also benefited them too, because you're able to, as they mentioned, this Adrian Adonis thing where he was fired and then brought back, and there's the in-between stuff where they believe he's out of shape and wasn't getting over with the crowd. They had placed a spot in there where they're able to say he got hurt to kind of write him off of TV. And that's the benefit of doing things post-production. And, I think that was kind of a silver lining. Of course, I think anyone would want live commentary. It's better there.
Yeah.
But I think there's a polish to doing it in a studio that maybe WWF was looking for. They wanted more of that sheen to it where you could go back and do it again. Say it with more emphasis on your voice. And you can't do that live. It is what it is. They cut it, and whatever you say live is live. Yeah,
I've done some voiceover stuff. It's not a hard thing to... Or it's a very hard thing to replicate that kind of energy mentality, especially with live sports. So there is the benefits, but it's also, I mean, it adds on to the workload. You got a lot more, especially if you're doing retakes and trying to get something out there that you can't really pull out unless you're at the live shows. It's really hard work, man.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think part of the discussion we're having here is kind of moot because we didn't even notice. And I guess the commentary has been one of the biggest criticisms that Meltzer's had and that we've had. It doesn't add to the product. We see them taking away in a lot of ways. Like I think most notably the King Kong Bundy angle where he hospitalized Hulk Hogan. It didn't have the same flair that maybe a Jim Ross in 1998 would have put on it, where he would have been like, that bastard, he has a fam. Like that would have been a little bit more. Like I think back of how better Jim Ross made those Triple H things where, any sort of Triple H heinous act where he's taking the sledgehammer to somebody. And I actually posted a compilation. It did really well on Instagram, but it was him pretty much like Triple H and Jim Ross was like the feud that never really happened. He absolutely despised him. But yeah, I think commentary can uplift the show. And I think the commentary was just here. And Ventura was awesome. McMahon was just there. And I think it's a nostalgia thing. You look at it with rose-colored glasses, but this was the announce team nowadays. I think people will be ripping on it.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. But I mean, they were making do with what they had, and I think they did a great job for it being, the tail end of the 80s.
So he continues. The best match was the IC bout between Randy Savage and Jake Roberts. Jake was a full-fledged baby face here, although at the beginning many fans were cheering Randy Savage. But typical WWF manipulation here. Belcaster, Randy quickly ran away from the bag with the snake to establish himself as the heel. And we got a DQ finish. Of course, we'll talk about the event.
Yeah.
But so easy to shift the fans into the direction you wanted them to. They just made them do maybe it's just something that was very much simpler times and everyone thought wrestling was not scripted. Where you can get the fans to believe whatever you wanted quickly. Your thoughts on this were Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage playing the opposite roles of where you probably thought they would be.
Yeah, no, and I do want to, like, why is running away from a bag with a giant ass snake in it make you a bad guy? Like,
I guess it's just cowardice. Like,
maybe
it's part of just his. I don't know. Maybe that's the way they look at it. Like he's not being a tough guy. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, those pansies. They can't hang out with the snake. Listen, it works. I guess they did a quick switch. But it doesn't make any sense with the Jake the Snake promos going into it, and just the Jake the Snake character in general. He's not necessarily a babyface type guy, especially after DDTing Steamboat on the concrete, a few weeks ago. It's insane.
So he talks about the other matches, and then we'll get into them. But more notably, he talks about Don Morocco squashing Dick Slater by using the trunks in 205. So Meltzer is kind of angry here about how the presentation of Dick Slater is. He says it's kind of pathetic when you think of what a big name Slater used to be in the business as to how things have changed to turn him into pretty much a nothing, but a well-paid nothing. So that we talked about Harley Race last week about him signing, what a big deal it should have been. But once you get added to this cog that is the WWF machine, you are what they want you to be, and the fans only can present whatever they're given on TV. And Dick Slater, although he was a big deal elsewhere, he's looked at as a nothing. And he was more comfortable with the pay. But goddamn,
yeah,
you think about all the other guys that got chewed up and spit out by the WWE machine that could have been something special, and they just weren't because of presentation.
No, 100%. Does it make Don Morocco as the original 205 Live then, right? Since he couldn't have done 205. That would make a great shirt. I love it.
So we also had two more quick notes, and Meltzer talks about this very interesting stuff here about the newsletter. And we talked about last week we talked about week after week, where the newsletter wasn't common knowledge. It was something that only a select few had. You either had to be in the know or you weren't. And this is why it's so interesting to read these, because this was a time where it wasn't distributed at a consistent rate.
Yeah.
So he says, I don't have to explain what this newsletter is to anyone or how it got started to longtime readers. However, as much as the popularity has recently achieved is personally flattering, it's also caused problems. He continued, this newsletter is basically a no-holds-barred attempt at an honest journalistic approach to covering the business. By doing so, I reveal a lot of info which simply isn't for public consumption, which is okay, because our circulation is comprised mainly of those within the business and very avid, smart fans who understand what the business is about. Meltzer continues, that's why this newsletter must always remain somewhat of an underground publication, There are several things in here which the general fans simply should not know because it would spoil the business for them. We all know that. For the radio personalities and newspaper reporters who receive this, please do me a favor and respect that in order for me to continue reporting in this manner, a lot of this has to remain off the record.
Wow.
So it's so interesting now. This is 1986. Fast forward to 2022, and there's other times that it's an example of it, where the newsletter was right in the eye of the storm of pro wrestling, kind of shifting what happens on our on-screen product. And I think if you see the spirit of what the newsletter started as, it jives with the business, because at some point the business became more was happened behind the scenes, and the more diehard fans are the ones that kind of rule. And I'm sure there's fans that watch it just for the on-screen product and believe it and live and die with the on-screen characters. But it's interesting to see how enclosed this was, that this was not supposed to get out to the general public, and this information is almost privileged.
Yeah, I love the a lot of this has to remain off the record, and Dave throughout the years became the record, right? Like, he is the focal piece for where people get the most informative news pieces from pro wrestling now. Like, it's insane. So to think of the legions of the fan base from the newsletter, how big it's possibly had to have grown up throughout the years, that's insane, man.
And it's also interesting too to think about. Obviously, social media has changed the way information travels, and that's for everything, not just pro wrestling, but just the conversation that would be had if people had access to this information so early on. Maybe wrestling wouldn't be where it is, because I think in order for it to have this boom, the initial boom, which is starting right now, are people going to be okay with that it's scripted? I think they weren't ready to have to buck the trend of this reputation that it was fake. And I think a lot of people were watching, which is interesting to me, because I've never watched pro wrestling not knowing it was scripted. It's just been an aforementioned thing that you just know from other people. I mean, it was like Santa Claus. Like, you knew Santa Claus. I guess there's a time where you thought Santa Claus was real. Same thing with pro wrestling. There might be a time where you thought it was real. But in a lot of ways, I think you couldn't achieve the heights it would reach if it was already assumed that it was scripted.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think they've always done a really good job blurring that line. Like, you know, just when you think you got it all figured out, they change the game on you. Like, I thought it was fake, and then I seen, you know, I was third row for a WWF show, and Hulk Hogan was busted open, and I was like, like, you fall back into that war. Like, well, that might be fake, but that's fucking real. Like, that's what wrestling does to you. It's the pageantry and the magic trickery that goes along with it that really swoops in those fan bases. And I can totally understand why Meltzer's like, keep it on the down low. Like, we don't want to fuck over the whole business just because we're discussing the innards here. And I mean, imagine if Oscar Mayer had a newsletter. Nobody would be eating sausage anymore.
I mean, it's so true. And I think back at the WrestleMania 3 main event, I think that is probably the largest main event that we're going to be building towards, with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And if anyone really knew the ins and outs, of course, they would know the scripted nature of it. But if they knew how exposed Andre the Giant was elsewhere, where we just read that story last month, where he was refusing to do business in Japan, and talk about Hogan and Andre having wrestled before in front of people at Shea Stadium. So I'm sure there were people that like, hey, I know this match is happening in Detroit, but didn't I see this happen already? And they're like, no, you didn't. It's like the Men in Black thing. They hold up the red light, and then you just have to forget it. But they're able to control the narrative and tell people what they're going to believe with this vehicle, similar to Disney or ESPN. They're driving the market. And the newsletter, you can make the argument that fans being on the inside is worse for the product. To me, I'm more fascinated by the inside stuff, so I wouldn't be as diehard a fan if it was perceived to be real and it was hidden. Like, you know, they released maybe a special where it's like behind the hidden magic, you know, the magic, how the trick is done. Yeah. To me, it resonates more the fact that I know it's scripted. I know it sounds probably silly to some people, but they were forced to be more creative and be more athletic and challenge themselves, because it's not just about a contest where you can have Don Morocco pin Dick Slater in 2 minutes. Or Hogan and Andre. If you watch that match, yes, it's significant. Yes, it's 2 larger-than-life superstars, but the match blows. Yeah. And, like, I'll say the quiet part out loud. The match sucks. And I think, like, the only reason that probably resonated with so many people is because they really thought Hogan was picking up Andre. And if they knew, maybe they wouldn't have bought it on pay-per-view. Maybe they didn't want to see it in person.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong at all, man.
So continuing here, speaking of injuries, the latest one here came to Slick. So this is an interesting story. So one night this past week, Slick broke his arm legit. As many of you know, they've got Matilda the Bulldog trained to attack Slick during live events. Also Jimmy Hart and Iron Sheik. Matilda went after Slick. Slick tripped doing his runaway act, landed hand first on the floor, and the wrist or elbow, I've heard different accounts here, broke. So we got an injury here. Always wondered how they worked with some of the animals here. Obviously Matilda, Damien the snake, Coco B. Words. What was the bird? Frankie the bird.
Frankie the bird. Yeah.
Traveling must have been an absolute nightmare with these animals and having to take care of them, because you heard stories. I remember Coco Beware did like an interview about traveling with Frankie and how it sucked. Like you had to carry, obviously people are already worried about carrying their gear and sometimes championship belts if they're lucky enough. But on top of that, you're caring for a living thing. But Matilda, too, I mean, it's not a bad companion to have on the road, but still probably a pain in the ass to have to clean up, feed the dog, all that stuff. And animals are unpredictable, like to use them during an angle. And not that Matilda did anything wrong, but Slick tripped and broke his arm. That's like, that's show business, baby.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is. I mean, even Larry ran out on stage at one of the AW shows. Like it's
that was all out weekend. That was right
shit happens, man. He was all out before Punk was. Yeah, but crazy. Like it is. It's got to be so hard to. I mean, I think about Frankie more so than Jake the Snake. He loves snakes, like it's his thing. But Frankie must have been. I don't know how you travel with a bird. Like it's so mind-blowing, like getting on a plane, like you taking the bird on the plane with you. You have to be like a driver for forever if you're making towns with Frankie the bird, man. You gotta be traveling well.
Yeah, I mean, this is not Pharaoh the dog where it's like it's actual Cody's dog. I'm like, you inherited the gimmick. You are the British Bulldogs. Guess what? You have this bulldog now and that you're responsible for, and take care of it. And Vince, Vince McMahon's not buying the kibble. You know what I mean? Like he had to go out. You're like, on the road, you got to worry about this dog. You got to worry about this dog eating. Like no one thinks about that when you see him on screen. Like, oh, it's so cool. Let's get a Matilda figure. Let's get all the stuff with it. And someone's got to take care of the dog. Anyway,
somebody's got it.
So we also have Adrian Adonis will be back soon, as he appeared as a fill-in on 11/13 in Sacramento and did interviews on 11/14 in San Diego. And Meltzer said, I was sure he'd show up at the LA taping, but he was nowhere to be seen. So he continues about Adrian Adonis. He said, my guess is there were two things that brought Adonis back. First, Adonis was hardly besieged with offers from other promoters after his firing. Word is that only one group, a small independent, even called him. And second was Roddy Piper's matches with Bob Orton were drawing very disappointing crowds, and the prospects of things not doing a lot worse with Don Morocco weren't good. And he says, I'm not at all convinced that Piper versus Adonis is the answer either, but at least it's going to do better than his matches with Bob Orton. So, I mean, there's no real information about Adrian Adonis being let go the first time. Could have been cost cutting, could have been the fact that maybe they thought his gimmick was a little bit too edgy for TV. And maybe NBC played a part in it. We talk about it was before its time, 100%. Before Goldust was doing sort of the flamboyant type of character. But interesting to see here because you really didn't even miss the time. Like he missed some live tapings and he was back pretty quickly after being fired.
Yeah, no, and that just plays up. Like here and gone, he's still here. Like it's not even a big deal.
So continuing, Danny Davis will be officiating most of the Bulldogs' title defenses in December, and Meltzer continues when the time comes. I expect he'll be the reason for the title change. Danny Davis becomes that crooked referee. He's the first of the kind. He was like the Nick Patrick before Nick Patrick was Nick Patrick.
Yeah.
So Danny Davis we saw the shady finish with the ref last week with the Bulldogs, and they're setting the stage for it. Kind of ahead of its time. I'm sure they were doing on Independence or some of the other promotions that were local, but this crooked referee with, I don't know. I think it plays a part. They don't do it enough in modern wrestling where we don't have a referee that has personality. They've done a lot to separate the professional wrestling referees to make them less personality wise. WWE moved away from having Mike Chioda and Earl Hebner. They wanted them to be pretty much anonymous. Yeah. Having your referees have personalities. I like what AEW does with Aubrey. I like what they do across all the board with some of the not in ring talent that kind of brings a little flair to the product.
Yeah, 100%. I miss the the days of the Attitude Era when we did know all the referees' names, and they added flair to it. You knew, like even our time in WCW covering that weasel Nick Patrick with playing the blind referee and shit
Charles
like that.
Robinson's a great call too.
But it really added more depth to the whole overall story, whatever they were trying to tell. I mean, Nick Patrick got mad heat, and I loved it.
Yeah, what about Bill Alfonso too? You know, what I mean?
100%.
Think about the heat he got in ECW. So I think it plays a huge part. And I'm not saying just rip it off completely. And I'm sure people would. I think it's kind of an evergreen concept where you could really tell a meaningful story if one of the dastardly heels has a referee in their pocket. Like imagine the Bloodline had a referee in their pocket. I'm not saying that's the answer, but can you imagine like you stack the odds? You truly do.
Yeah. No, even going to like MJF, you know, out of when he was running strong with the Pinnacle, you think that would have fallen right into his lap. Like, I paid off the referee, the douchebag, you know, like it would have been great.
Yeah. I think it has some weight here, and I think it resonates really well here. And of course, the most famous one was that the plastic surgery with the Hebner twins and Andre the Giant getting the title from Ted DiBiase, that whole thing. But we have Ricky Steamboat. He's set to receive a throat injury on the TV tapings, which will air next weekend in his bout with Randy Savage. Meltzer continues, Steamboat will be gone from 11/22 through 12/28 on vacation, and he'll come back having lost his voice, which Meltzer is reasoning to stop him from doing interviews since they think he's not too strong on the mic. So interesting strategy to if you're not going to get better at it, maybe to stop doing it altogether.
Yeah, and take his voice away.
And rumor has it Steamboat did not ask to use real glass, so there was no issue about the vacation. So.
Thank God.
Meltzer continues, since Steamboat really won't be back into the new year and knowing how WWF stretches their feuds out, we can be assured that of at least one match at WrestleMania. It appears by all results that John Studd is gone for now, and according to what he said, he won't be back until the end of February. So as we mentioned before, Steamboat being gone, the story's already told. Like we already know we're going to get Steamboat versus Savage, and we'll see exactly how it's going to play out. And Savage, this is important to keep him a heel, especially in that Jake Roberts feud. He needs to be established as this heel going forward, especially for the Steamboat injury. When he's coming back, Steamboat's going to be the conquering face to take on this heel for the IC title, and that's why all the dominoes have to be in a row before you set the stage, because it would have been easy to say, cool, let the live audience just cheer Savage and boo Jake Roberts, but it has long-term effects, especially with his audience that, again, thought it was real.
Yeah, 100%, man.
We also have reference every time he mentions Junkyard Dog in the newsletter. I thought it was a typo, but he's literally calling him junk food because it was over his weight. So Meltzer makes his feelings very clear. And again, if you're reading what we just read before, he believes this is in-house, just a couple friends vibing in a room and maybe passing a blunt, sipping some beers, and we're just talking about our favorite wrestlers and lack thereof. And he's pretty damn honest about what he feels about Junkyard Dog, and pretty hateful. Calling him junk food is kind of a low blow, but you know, one of those things where he pretty much makes it clear that who he doesn't like: Mean Gene, Hogan, Vince's commentary, and Junkyard Dog so far.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on that.
But he loves Jesse the Body.
Yeah. So we have some attendance numbers here. 1017 at the Capitol Center drew about 10,000 as Hogan beat Orndorff in the cage. In early years, that would have been an easy sellout. He says 11-5 in Portland drew and announced 3,711 fans, although one live report said the crowd was at most 1,800. And he again says that's the match that was main evented by Junk Food beating Jake Roberts. So again, he's calling him Junk Food. Junkyard Dog is his name, sir. And we also have 11-7 in Pittsburgh drew 91-75 as Sika pinned Slater. So some of these numbers we're looking at, you know, they're not great. I mean, looking at 10,000, 3,000 for some nights. I know it's a live show and it's not the same type of market.
Yeah.
These are numbers that we're looking at the golden age of WWF, or people are like waxing poetic for a time that it used to be. It's not like the product was like scorching hot for a live event yet.
No, not at all. It'd be very akin to, you know, those weekly posts we see where this side of the arena is cut off for production on AEW side. I mean, it happens to everybody. You can't guarantee a sellout every time you're doing a show. Here, you would think it'd be a little bit easier because the shows are spaced out a little bit more, but clearly, I mean, it's hard to fill buildings sometimes, and you just got to accept it. Go out there and put on your best damn show you possibly can, and you know, keep shooting for the stars.
So he also said 11-7 in Anaheim drew less than 1,000 as Junkyard Dog beat Jake the Snake via DQ. 11-6 in Buffalo drew less than 1,500. Sika the Samoan pinned Dick Slater. Man, those numbers, less than 1,000. Think about WWF drawing less than 1,000. I know some years prior to this, they were running local high schools. Like some people have posters of them running high schools. Like it blows your mind to think about where WWF is at now, or WWE, I should say, is now compared to then, where you're having less than 1,000 people, 900 people in an arena to see a WWF show. when
Yeah.
Hogan's on the card. That's pretty wild to think about.
No, that's insanity, man. Hulkamania was not running wild in the greater part of the United States.
We knew every person's name in there. Every Hulkamaniac got a shout out. All right, well, let's get our fix. Talk about Saturday night's main event number 7 and number 8. The first one being from Richfield, Ohio. Let's get our fix.
Get your fix.
Yeah, brother.
All right, we have WWF Saturday night's main event number 7 on deck right here, October 4th, 1986, Richfield, Ohio, from the Richfield Coliseum. This was taped all the way back on September 13th, 1986. And damn, dude, like a whole month has passed here. A lot could change here. People could get fired. People can get hurt. We saw both of that happen in the newsletter.
Yeah.
Kind of a risky move to run an event a month out. Think about how much changes. I know the news cycle moves so fast in wrestling nowadays between AEW, Impact, WWE, MLW, NWA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine if you watch an AEW show from a month ago or a WWE SmackDown or Raw from a month ago, the whole product has completely shifted. Storylines have moved on. It just kind of shows and speaks to really how slow. It was slow as molasses moving through the car.
It's crazy. And you got to think about like how much, like you just said, how much changes in a month. It was all just to get the picture perfect commentary done between Vince and Jesse. That's it. They had too many retakes, damn it.
They're sweating in the room. They're just like, do it again. But it's
for other reasons. And then they're doing it.
Oh, man. But our current WWF champs are as followed. The world champions Hulk Hogan. He won it back on January 23rd, 1984. Our IC champion is that aforementioned Randy Savage, won it back on 2/8/1986. Our tag team champions are the British Bulldogs. They were bestowed these tag team titles back on 4/7/1986. And the women's champion is Fabulous Moolah, won it back on July 9th, 1986. Not that anyone's talking about women's wrestling in 1986, but she does hold the championship, which, if you remember in 1998 when we were covering, they forgot it existed. Like, they just brought it back for Jacqueline and Sable to feud over, and like, oh yeah, we have this championship. Let's give it to somebody. And that's the same thing that happened with the light heavyweight championship. Sometimes they forget they have titles. Ultimate Dragon was holding the title in WCW. No one even did. So funny.
It's crazy. Absolutely wild.
All right, so we have the opening here. Our hosts are Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, dressed like Buckwheat here.
Baby. Look at
and
me go.
Here we are. We get a whole bunch of stuff here where they're letting us know Roddy Piper was supposed to face the Iron Sheik tonight, but it seems Adonis and Morocco beat up Piper so bad that his knee is too weak to go from this chair attack about a week ago at this point. And Piper gives an interview to set the stage here to let fans know he didn't mean to let them down, but he's hurt and nobody tells him what to do. He will wrestle tonight against doctor's orders. So setting the stage big here. Nothing like a Roddy Piper promo, dude.
Yeah, no, these are shining moments from us covering Saturday night's main event, man. I love young Piper. Like, he's just so fucking off the wall, off the rails, crazy, and you love it.
And it, again, Collision definitely is influenced by this. When you're watching this, some of the stuff that opens the show where they have these one-off in not a studio, but like a very plain backdrop, and you have some of the talent from AEW getting on there and making their intentions known for the night. It goes a long way of setting the stage and getting you in the mood. It might be nostalgia, rose-colored glasses, but it is something that I really enjoy from this, especially Roddy Piper, the energy he brings in a canned studio interview that was taped a month ago or 35 years ago. It doesn't matter. The dude brings the noise, and he could sell anybody anything.
Hell yeah, man.
White gloves, ketchup pop, whatever.
Ketchup popsicles.
You guys know if you've been listening. But we open up with the WWF Championship match. Hulk Hogan taking on Paul Orndorff with Bobby Heenan in his corner. So I'll let you take the lead on this. Paul Orndorff recently turned heel. We saw him turn babyface, and like I said, a lot changes over the course of time. Go through this match here, and this is the main event of the night, opening the show. We talk about the format. This is what they do to get the most eyes on the product. Yeah,
it still throws me off, too. Like, you're opening the whole show with Hogan in a title match. Like, it's my mind has been so fed-brained, if you will, that I'm used to main events going on last, man. So this is like, this pops up. I'm like, oh, all right, show's almost over. But no, we're rocking and rolling. And this was a very, very fun match. I love the chemistry between Paul Orndorff and Hulk Hogan here, and the shenanigans with Bobby Heenan on the outside, the crutches coming in, Piper coming out, fucking trying to attack Hogan, just going all batshit crazy. It was done so well. Nothing fantastic, but Piper hitting Adrian Adonis, like just going fucking crazy out there. I thought it was a very good storytelling match, like leading onto little details of Piper coming out there, being Hogan's number one rival, but kind of helping him out a little bit too. Like, it's good shit, man.
So we see the finish go to hell here with the DQ. Hogan is setting up for a pile driver, and we get Adrian Adonis jumping the rail, attacking Hogan. The fans are booing, beating him down. 10 minutes and 21 seconds. And Roddy Piper tries to hurry down with his crutches to get to Adonis, setting up this blood feud between Piper and Adonis. And Piper hits Adonis really hard. He tries to whack Orndorff, but Orndorff ducks, and he leaves Adonis. Like, I want nothing to do with this. He almost hits Hogan too, which is setting the stage. Like, yeah, as you mentioned, they are the main rivals. They were on opposite sides of the main event of WrestleMania 1. WrestleMania 2, they were involved with each other too, even though Piper was taking on Mr. T, who is one of Hogan's good friends in canon.
Yeah.
So they've always been on opposite sides of things. And Piper and Hogan do have a stare down, like they're about to hit each other, but they know they have pretty much other things to handle and really put their differences aside. And Ventura thinks Piper is sold out because he sided with Hogan, which the consistency is awesome, because even though Piper is a face here and so is Hogan, they are referencing their history and not dismissing the fact that if you're a long-term fan at this point watching the product, Piper and Hogan have no business being next to each other and not hitting each other. But I thought this did a really good job of really building up a lot of things in one match. Yeah. 11 minutes total, probably all entrances included. And also want to shout out Orndorff and Heenan walking out to Hogan's music just for insult to injury. So, a DQ finish open the show. I get it. Like, you don't want to pin Orndorff, especially as he just became this big bad heel.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it, but big match feel. I'll give them that to open the show.
No, absolutely, man. Like, both guys looked like $1 million. The story was being told, and like, you can't really ask for more to start off the show, and it was very good, man. Especially
in this time, it wasn't anything spectacular as far as work rate goes. It's hitting AB, kick punch type of stuff, and then the excitement of the characters. It really is larger than life superhero characters, and seeing Hogan and Piper interact, that they're meant to be on the screen together. And as much as they probably maybe didn't get along well in real life, they had magic on screen.
Yeah, no, this was the '86 version of Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson. Like, we started off the show. It was good though. It was fun.
So we lead into our snake pit match between Ricky Steamboat and Jake Roberts, and this just means that both of them are bringing their respective reptiles to the ring. And this match is shorter than I thought it would be. And essentially, what is a snake pit match? I guess they just happen to be there. Like, this is part of what they're doing here. And the work rate between Steamboat and Roberts, like, Ricky Steamboat throws the most picture perfect arm drag of all time. Jake Roberts using his size in this match, and Roberts playing his role so well here. The short arm clothesline is a thing of beauty, and anytime he teases the DDT, the fans just react like the air gets let out of the building. But we see Steamboat surprising Jake with a crucifix pin, similar like Darby's finish, not the Last Supper pin, but the crucifix caught him off guard, which is a finish we don't really see often during these times. 6 minutes and 22 seconds after the match, Roberts gets pissed about this. He knocks Steamboat out to the floor, hits him into the ring post, and then he tosses Steamboat in the ring. He takes out Damien, and now Steamboat kind of gets his wits together. He takes out the Komodo dragon, or was it like a baby crocodile, whatever it was?
It looked like a baby crocodile.
Baby crocodile. Okay, but yeah, Komodo dragon has more of like the bigger size, but
it fits the vibe. Yeah.
Either way, he hits Jake with it to send him and Damien leaving, and this was good, fast-paced action. It was short. I probably wanted more. I understand it's like a short TV show.
Yeah.
And again, animals being used. Someone traveled. And I know Ricky Steamboat didn't have to travel with the baby crocodile all the time. We'll call him Lyle the crocodile. But, a good enough match. What are your thoughts on it?
I enjoyed it. It was cool seeing Steamboat in purple. I thought that was a different aesthetic. I have not seen Steamboat rock anything else besides... I'm pretty sure like red and white, maybe yellow. Yeah, so it was cool to see him in some different color. But Jake the Snake's money here. Steamboat's just as good. I love the crucifix finish. Thought that was really nice. Yeah, but I think doing a crucifix to somebody the size of Jake Roberts to begin with, even now, how old he is, it's still impressive because that motherfucker, I seen him at StarCast. He's tall as shit still. Big dude, man. Very impressive. A very fun match. I wish it was a little bit longer too, but yeah, I enjoyed the shit out of it.
Do you think they couldn't get like a Komodo dragon in time and they just had this baby crocodile? Because this is like the baby crocodile you'd see. It's a cute crocodile, like, and it's scary to Jake. I don't know. And Jake's like this keeper of Damien, this big giant python that you think he wouldn't be scared, but whatever. I understand that Steamboat gets the win over here, and they want him standing tall.
I still have PTSD from the little crocodiles from Donkey Kong Country from Super Nintendo.
Amazing.
So I fear the little crocodile much more than I do the snake. But
just makes the noise "og."
Yeah, but it's super. I think it's they were making. Gold out of goose shit with we can't get a Komodo dragon. Let's get God damn it, get a crocodile. Put some tape on his mouth. Like, Vince was working the Vince gimmick, and it worked out. According to WWF, it's a Komodo dragon.
This is my second Grinch reference of the week, I guess, and I'm just maybe in the holiday spirit. But it's like Max wearing the reindeer, man. It's
100%.
You can't tell me it's not a dog, but
he's a reindeer.
It's a reindeer for the time being. So. We have an interview with Hulk Hogan, and they make it clear that even though he was kind of bailing him out here, he's never going to trust Roddy Piper, even no matter where he's leaning. And nice consistency here. They want to make sure it's clear to the audience that maybe Piper might be changing his ways, but Hogan's not trusting him in any capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get Pedro Morales taking on Iron Sheik, and Roddy Piper interrupts this match before it even starts. And he hobbles down. He's yelling at Pedro to get out of the ring because this is my match. The doctors didn't clear him, but he says, I don't give a shit. One thing I pulled away from this, we see Pedro Morales being utilized in this like list of Roman passing people. And I understand it's a different year. And these are two guys that are highly touted former WWF champions. Pedro Morales kind of treated like a chump here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Super chumped. But rightfully so. Rowdy Piper comes down. When Rowdy Piper comes down and tells you get the fuck out of the ring, you listen to Rowdy Piper, especially when he's got crutches. He ain't playing games.
So as we mentioned, Roddy Piper took over the match. He's going to be taking on the Iron Sheik. Slick's in the corner. Match doesn't last long at all. Piper quickly avoids a immediate charge from Sheik, and he whacks Sheik with the crutch. Slick is distracting Piper long enough for Sheik to stand up and attack from behind, but the match is pretty much over because Sheik kicks away the knee, lifts Piper up in a suplex. Piper counters that into a small package for the quick 1-2-3. And Piper is, as we know, a babyface now, still kind of abiding by some heel tactics. We saw him hit him with the crutch. Similar to Hogan, like Hogan does cheat. People forget.
Yeah.
Like, Hogan was one of the biggest heels before he even turned heel in WWF. The only thing I thought pulled away from this was you just did a crucifix pin right before. It took away
100%.
from this because we always talk about this, and they always say it on independent shows, like kind of have a conversation with the people and figure out their finishes because it has a less, if you're doing this whole thing, you're going to pile drive someone on the concrete and the person's going to leave it a stretcher and a neck brace. You want everyone to be in shock of what happened. And then someone else pulls the spot out in the show. It loses its steam. So this kind of did that for me here.
Yeah, 100%. You always got to check it with the boys. Make sure you guys aren't repeating shit.
We go into this 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championship. The British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, defending against the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine with Johnny Valiant. Of course, Captain Lou Albano is in the corner of the British Bulldogs. These guys have a feud that's been extended, of course, a whole bunch of different Saturday Night's Main events. The last one we just covered was another 2 out of 3 falls match.
Yeah.
And this was the better one. And I honestly believe that this is one of the better matches we've seen here as far as matches go on Saturday Night's Main Event. Work rate.
Yeah.
I'm sure at the time this match was unbelievable because it was so destitute of anything that resembled high work rate that people that were watching this product were blown away with some of the smooth wrestling we saw here. And also, when you really appreciate Dynamite Kid, just his presence, and I understand his body took a toll for it, but the dude gave it all in the ring. And, whatever. I know the dark side of the ring presented him as not that great of a person, all that stuff. But watching the man in the ring, that style was well before its time. This is a style that was being worked in Japan at the strong style type of style, but you could see the influence across all different places. It's Benoit, it's Angle, it's the technical side of wrestling that was well before it was accepted in WWF as a public thing.
Yeah, no, very well put. And I love that they're continuing this 2 out of 3 falls kind of like vibe every Saturday night's main event. And this is probably my favorite Greg Valentine or Brutus the Barber Beefcake match. This was done very well. Valentine looked like $1 million in this.
He looked great.
He was throwing some hooks and shit, man. Like he looked like a fucking $1 million, man. But they had such a blast watching this, and they did the usual. We got one win on the Bulldogs. We got one win on Beefcake and Valentine, and they really hyped it up. They made it good. I thought this was probably the best thing we've covered match-wise on Shot of Nostalgia's Saturday night's main event so far.
So the first fall took place 4 minutes and 47 seconds in. The Dream Team winds up getting the fall where Beefcake cuts off Davey Boy Smith. Valentine gets in the figure 4 lock, and they tap out, and there is a short break in between, and Gene Okerlund announces that Adonis's arm is being injured and being whacked earlier. Piper's crutch. This is the spot we're talking about where they were trying to write him off TV before bringing him back. And then also we got the second fall with this headbutt, the swan dive headbutt to Valentine from Dynamite Kid. As I mentioned before, this dive and headbutt is akin to Bryan Danielson's. This is the move list they're pulling from. 9 minutes and 38 seconds. Now it's a tie score, 1-1 Bulldogs and the Dream Team. And we get some more action to kind of finish us off as we go to the finish. 14 minutes and 33 seconds. We get about 5-6 minutes without any falls. But really awesome stuff as we see kind of them come to the crescendo of the match. Dynamite had Valentine cornered, and Davey Boy reverses a whip on Beefcake, and then he delivers a picture-perfect fisherman suplex tight for the pin. Great finish. This was very much, if not better than the WrestleMania 2 match they had, if not better than the other Saturday night's main event match. Meltzer gave this a 4.5 stars, I believe. So this match is well worth the watch if you're looking for something to check out work rate wise. Maybe you haven't been as enthralled with the matches because it's all about the characters. This was a match to go back and check out. It was short, 12 minutes and 18 seconds, but that's an eternity back in this day.
100%. This is like if FTR took a time machine and went back in time and wrestled on Saturday night's main event, because it felt like one of those big matches. It had a really good vibe to it. Really good action going on. I thoroughly enjoyed the shit out of it.
So we get by the way, the Bulldogs do retain the WWF Tag Team Championship as we move into our main event, quote, main event of the evening, which is Kamala the Ugandan Giant with the Wizard and Kim Chi taking on Lanny Poffo. And this is just a quick squash match, 1 minute and 43 seconds to kind of lead us off air. If you guys are looking for some clarity, yes, Wizard is the future leader of the Dungeon of Doom that we cover extensively in WCW, and love to talk about that. And we also have, Kamala. I mean, he wins with the Ugandan splash, and it's just a squash match. And I think looking at what they were doing with Kamala, and he had a short live. He has a great Hasbro figure. I love what they do.
Hell yeah, he does.
He's a great LJN as well.
Got a great Mattel figure, man. Comes with the mask.
I mean, this is definitely one of those contrived stereotype gimmicks that probably people would be upset about. But as far as Kamala, his story is sort of tragic. If you guys are familiar with his post-wrestling life, not great. Kind of a cautionary tale of health and all that, and keeping in touch with making sure you're following and staying true to who you are as far as going to the doctor and all that.
Yeah.
But Kamala himself, I mean, it was okay. It's a weird placement on the card. Like, I understand you want to open up with the championship match between Hogan because of the most eyes on it. Why wouldn't you put this in between and let the Bulldogs and the Dream Team go at it to end the show?
100%, man. And it's weird. I get they want to put the character over and everything. Poor Lanny Poffo, not getting any love here. He just he is the town jobber for the night. But yeah, Kamala, great looking character. I would love to be in an arena at this time and see his entrance and see what like the overall feel for him on the crowd base, because he looks like a monster on television. But I'm a little pulled away from the gimmicks, right? So I'm just looking at him like, look at this fucking guy with all this goofy shit painted on. But yeah, man, it's very crazy that it was a squash match, and I wish they would have swapped out with the Bulldogs and put the Bulldogs on last, because I think it would have been a better go home.
Absolutely. I mean, especially where if you're trying to keep eyes on the product, this was only 1 minute 43 seconds. You could have cropped it in between, and I don't know. I'm all about structure of the card. It has to flow, and then this is like a dead stop. This literally is just a screeching halt where it's leaving skid marks on the road. Like, that's how much it comes to a halt. And whatever. I understand that maybe they didn't believe this was going to be recurring watch, that this was going to be a one-off thing where they're just watching the show and it exists, the live event, like people going back and watching NFL live games. How many people do that?
Yeah.
Maybe they just thought it was just going to happen. Let's put this in the spot. Who cares with the structure of the card? But as far as rewatch value, that's part of leaves a lot to be desired. So
yeah. 100%. Plus, you get to think in the actual time, it's probably like 11:30 by the time this is airing, like the PM. You know, it's nobody's fucking staying up to watch Kamala and Lanny Poffalo. Fuck that shit.
So we go to WWF Saturday Night's Main Event number 8 from November 29th, 1986, Los Angeles, California, from the Los Angeles Sports Arena. This was taped a week earlier on 11/15/1986. All our champions are exactly the same. Those Bulldogs were able to hold on to those tag titles, and we get an introduction to the show from Jesse Ventura. And
looking like a smooth Topher Grace with that beautiful hair.
He's wearing a toupee here, so
easily has to be. Yeah,
trying to hide the fact that the man is bald, and he clear as day is bald. We all know Jesse Ventura is rocking that look.
Yeah,
you know. So whatever. They give us a preview of the show, what's going on, and I like how they're just, I like the backdrop of the crowd with the announcers as they're doing this, and Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura. It's a warm, fuzzy feeling when you hear them open the show, and it's hard because it's very much hard to assess the quality of it because those voices are so nostalgic, and I know Meltzer is very critical of the announce team, and you are as well. I mean, we have been as well, but
100%.
Hearing them welcome us in, it's hard to immerse ourselves. I would love to have someone who's never watched wrestling before let me compare it to the opening of Dynamite with Excalibur and Taz, and who I want you to compare which is better because I it's hard for me to even decipher.
Yeah, no, I mean the commentary team here is they got their ups and downs too. Like it's Jesse Ventura is very very non-PC a lot of the time, and Vince is like kind of like playing like, oh well, that's what Ventura says, like it's hit or miss here. But I do feel you with the warm and fuzzies when you got Jesse the Body Ventura. Welcome to Saturday night's main event right here at this where we at the Silver Dome. We're at the Los Angeles Sports Arena.
Man, so we get those like little intros into kind of introducing what's happening on the show, and the one thing that stuck out to me was we had Randy Savage where he's screaming at Elizabeth to polish the belt, and he says, if I lose tonight, it's your fault. So full-blown heel. And the commentary, we'll talk about it in a second for this opening match before we get there. Man, Vince McMahon is making a lot of very disingenuous comments about Miss Elizabeth, which we'll talk about. But we have Mean Gene getting a quick word from the IC competitors, and Jake the Snake is one of them. And Randy Savage wants to make the belt out of human flesh because, I mean, I guess that's the tie-in with a snake. This was such a weird promo from Randy Savage. Fascinating to me.
Very, very, very of the times promo piece here, interview piece, whatever you want to call it. But like, you can't say shit like this 10 years removed from this and have a positive reaction. Be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
So we lead into this Intercontinental Championship match, and as I mentioned before in the opening, it's very appropriate that we're sitting here watching a showcase match for the Intercontinental Championship in really the biggest week of the title in such a long time, with Gunther surpassing the record. Seeing this title showcase in a big place. This is the hot spot on this card, as we talk about every Saturday night's main event. That opening match is the destination for the biggest match of the night. And as we know, we have another WWF Championship match on this card, so it just shows how important this feud has become and how important this championship is viewed as. And, I know a lot of people are talking about, the International Championship main eventing All Out and seeing the mid-card championships mean something again. This is a time where it meant a lot too. And, Chad and I were talking about it on Wrestling Tonight. I know you said you're not really watching the WWE product, but do you feel like the Intercontinental Championship was more important here or currently today by breaking the record?
Ooh, that is a very tough question. Again, you got to take yourself, remove yourself from the timepieces of both, because I mean now, like as I would probably be watching this as at my age now, but I haven't watched a lot of Gunther outside of his NXT stuff when he was Walter, and I think the importance is there. I think it feels important from it spectating outside of the bubble. I'm like, God, good for them, But yeah, maybe it is more important nowadays than it was here. I don't know. How's the booking side of the intercontinental matches nowadays? Because that's something I don't get to see, and that's a big important part of the puzzle that's missing for me.
Yeah, what they've been doing recently, I mean, Gunther's been not a victim of 50-50 booking. He has more than favorable booking where he's undefeated on the roster. He hasn't been pinned. He lost by count out to Chad Gable. The feud with Gable has a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
Main evented Raw the other night where it was such a big monumental match. And I think Corey Graves was talking about the pageantry of the match with Chad Gable's family in the front row and just big match feel. And I can't remember the last time the Intercontinental Championship held that much weight.
Yeah.
And here, this feels like a really big match. Of course, Randy
yeah.
Savage and Jake Roberts are like larger than life. And at the time, even then, they are still just these characters that are resonant. They pop through the screen. That's the biggest thing, too, with a lot of these WWF characters is, man, they just fly through the screen where you know they are somebody and they feel important and they're so charismatic and just there's such an appeal to everything they're doing on the screen. Savage alone, and even Jake Roberts, who very simple act, very simple attire, but he's so electric. You look into his eyes when the camera appears on him. He just draws you in.
Yeah, 100%. No, so I will say, hearing that they're main eventing Raws with it and stuff, will give it to Gunther. Yeah, of course it's more important, and I like that they give it that big fight feel for that title, as they should.
So we get some, as I mentioned before, Vince making some like very off-color comments about Elizabeth during this and just about her involvement and, very interesting. Go back and watch this if you guys are looking at it. Even Ventura is like kind of on Vince, like, all right, take it easy a little bit.
And when Ventura is coming down on you, you got a problem going on.
So before the bell even sounds, the crowd is chanting DDT to show how over this finisher is. And this you got to put yourself in the context of 1986. The DDT is a move that's unbeatable. The DDT is lights out. No one's kicking out of it. There's no near fall. The DDT is the most protected finisher in all pro wrestling at this time. So the fans are chanting it. And Jake Roberts is an enigma as far as pro wrestler goes. And you pair that with a devastating finisher, you get a unstoppable combo. And it's very interesting to me that two of the guys that associate with snakes have the most over finishers in all of wrestling during their time.
Yeah.
Randy Orton, the Viper with the RKO, and Jake Roberts with the DDT. Both these dudes are just like examples of simple is better sometimes. And very meaningful movements in the ring. Both Jake Roberts and Randy Orton have a lot in common.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So when Ventura is asked who he thinks is going to be the fan favorite to the match, he replies by saying that both men are the most hated men in wrestling. So he calls it toss-up. And the crowd was chanting for DDT. It's not very catchy to chant Top Rope Elbow for Macho, so I guess they're not going to chant for his move. But this match goes back and forth, dude. Like, I mean, they lock up in the beginning of the match. Macho is hesitant for the Damien bag in the corner. Yeah. He's freaking out. Sells it so well to sell how much the snake is kind of an advantage for Jake here, where even the mental mind games of at any moment this thing can slither out of that bag and come and go on Randy. And people have a legitimate fear of snakes. And I'm not sure, everybody has the same feeling, but there's something unpredictable about snakes and spiders and stuff, and even just the bag, even if Damien's not even in the bag, you know what I mean? It just has this feeling.
It still has the aura. But listen, both men going back and forth with each other. This was a very, very well done match. I thought it was fun. Both guys look like $1 million. There's some great action in between it. Sad that it was a double count out, but understandable. But it was still very, very. Or double disqualification, but still very, very well done. I thought the storytelling in it was good, minus Vince McMahon's misogynistic commentary, but still, I didn't really take away from the match, so I enjoyed it. And I fucking hate snakes, so I'm with Macho Man here. I ain't playing with no slithering pythons, man. Yeah.
So we see this match come to a head here, where the referee can't really get control. So they're getting really rough with each other with the chops coming down, and the ref is trying to admonish them and saying, "Just back off. You know, at this point, just separate and get to the ring." Macho gets pissed, tosses Dave Hebner to the side. And then Roberts is starting to come on him again. He's not letting go. And Dave Hebner's trying to admonish him. And he gets the same treatment from Jake Roberts. And at this point, Hebner looks over the timekeeper's table and says, just throw the match out. So fans are reacting in the way you expected. They wanted to finish here. Double DQ, 9 minutes and 24 seconds. Damien does come out of the bag, and Savage says, "Peace out, brother. I'm out of here." This match was really awesome. I mean, finish aside with double DQ. I understand two guys you don't want to pin, and want to make sure they're both strong going into the programs that they're going into. And the IC title feels very important here. I love it. I mean, these it ages really well because of what these guys have accomplished in the ring after the fact. But even 100%. In the moment, these dudes just feel larger than life.
Yeah, and listen, I think as for a double disqualification, I thought it was done well. Like like fuck off, get the ref. They're both pissing. Like fuck you, ref, get out of here. He's got no other choice. Called match, ring the bell. And I love that the tease the snake spot with Macho Man, and he's like, I'm out. I don't want nothing to do with it, because it makes the moment when he gets bit by the snakes that much more important. So a lot of good storytelling here as well.
Yeah, and seeing Hebner being tossed out of the ring into the timekeeper's table is pretty wild. It just shows like referees and ref bumps are so interesting to me, how they're sold, and they can make or break the finish of a match if they're a part of it. And you look at different ref bumps are in the history of wrestling, and if they sell it right, they can really make it feel important. And this was the case here, where although you can make the argument that maybe Jake should have been DQ'd, but I guess you could go into the judgment is Savage did it as well. And even though it didn't happen at the same time, they didn't hit each other with weapons at the same time, it was a decision on the ref's behalf and saying he just couldn't get control of the match, and sometimes that happens. Yeah, and it was a very that's what I mean. It was a very honest double DQ, right? Like, it wasn't goofy shit. So they show a clip of Bobby Heenan buying Hercules' contract from Slick as his latest commodity. He's trying to end Hulkamania. And I don't know. I mean, I have a question for you about these managers. As far as, do you feel like this would hold a place in wrestling for some of these like mid-card guys, for like Prince Nana to have this ability to buy some of these guys from other managers? We see it somewhat like, obviously the Mogul Embassy is existing, but this would be like, them buying, I don't know, like say when Tully was managing the Pinnacle, you say, we're going to buy each other's contracts, and all of a sudden, affiliation aside, you're now part of the Heenan family, whether you like it or not. Yeah. I mean, I could see it happening now. They really need a good, like, Smart Mark Sterling can't be the guy that's like, hey, I'm going to buy, with the FTR for a week. Like, it don't work like that. You need somebody that's believable. I don't think Prince Nana's selling anything. He can't even sell Brian Cage. Like, I was just feeling it, so the Prince Nana dance though is going viral. It's beautiful. Absolutely, man. Him and Daniel Garcia need to get into a dance. Prince Nana dance is going viral. That's gonna be a TikTok dance for that dude. They need something, right? Like, I could totally see it happening. They got enough good workers, like talent wise, wrestling wise, that they can form something like this. It just needs to be done spot on, because nobody's a Bobby Heenan right now. 100%. I think Heenan collecting guys, it doesn't hold the same weight here, because like you said, there's no Bobby Heenan on the roster that could be that guy. And no disrespect to Don Callis or any of these guys, I don't think the association with Don Callis is you have to be a slime ball, and everyone that's with Heenan is a heel, but it's an eclectic mix of heels where, like, it's not the same type of heel. Everyone that is with Don Callis right now feels like they have one vested interest. I mean, maybe the interest would be here for Heenan. They're all going to end Hulkamania, but they're all so different on their own paths. They're not coming out to the ring together. It's just Bobby Heenan's wearing one jacket one day, and he's coming out again later in the night to manage someone else. And that was the case throughout his whole tenure, and it's just a different concept nowadays. No, absolutely. So we have Mean Gene speaking with Hercules and Hulk before their match, and Hercules says to himself over and over again that he's going to be the champ. And obviously he's wishful thinking, but nobody could have believed that Hercules Hernandez would ever have been the world champion, especially tonight. This was not his night. Hulk Hogan cuts a promo here, and the most classic Hulk Hogan promo, an infamous feat about hanging out in the Garden of Eden with his main squeeze, Eve. And he cuts the line too. This is where the power lies. So this is one of those famous promos you hear. Yeah, he's living the dream. But this is fully geeked out Hulk Hogan promo. Done at its best. Like, I loved it. Is he saying he's banging Eve? Like, is that what he's trying to say? He's definitely eating apples with her. I'll tell you that. That's where Jake the Snake comes in, right? Fair, yeah. Then we're writing a different book, my friend. But we go to the WWF Championship match. Hulk Hogan taking on Hercules Hernandez with Bobby Heenan in his corner. This is the pinnacle, the top of the mountain for Hercules' wrestling career. That you can't convince me otherwise. Yeah,
I mean, he looked like $1 million, like look wise. I was surprised. Like I was like, man, he looks way more like a wrestler than I envisioned him like looking like a wrestler. But the match was the shits. What were you expecting by putting Hulk Hogan with Hercules? It wasn't anything fantastic. This was your get Hogan over, go run it over. It felt very long, and it was way too short for it to feel that long.
Agreed. And I think Hercules looks great, and then the bell rang, that type of stuff. And I always say right now on the Impact roster, Jake something has the look of Hercules Hernandez, but the dude can work. So I think it's the perfect mix. Like if Hercules could go at all, because even at this time, as we keep mentioning over and over again, you don't have to work well. You could have actually pulled the trigger and been a big top guy. It just, he couldn't even do that. And this was one of the first Hogan matches we're seeing. Maybe it's why it's not in the opening main slot as far as the opening match, is because this is a Hogan formula match where it's overcome the strength of Hercules. He hulks up. It's big boot. It's leg drop. It's pose, brother. That's it.
Yeah.
And what would you really expect? This guy who is, I mean, he's got muscles on top of muscles and he can't move. This is the type of wrestler that Hogan was just chopping down with the edge of his hand, pretty much, how Voodoo Child goes. But this guy is, this is the type of match you'd expect. I mean, how could it be good? I mean, like, how could it be good? There's no way it would be good.
I gave it a little more hope than it needed, and that was my fault. This was like, damn, Hercules Hernandez looks like $1 million here. Like maybe he's gonna get in there, and this is gonna be. And it was exactly what you would think it would have been.
So we have Jesse Ventura having lunch with Bob Orton and Jimmy Hart. Ooh. And Bob Orton's at dinner, not wearing a shirt. Belcaster.
Cowboy shit, man. It's just what he does.
He's eating. Can you imagine just seeing Bob Orton? I mean, I'm sure there were people in the restaurant that weren't part of production. It's like, all right, just do your thing. You can have lunch, and there's Cowboy Bob Orton.
Yeah,
no shirt, just eating a salad or whatever he's ordering.
It's wild, absolutely wild.
So the main focus of this segment here was Orton denying his friendship with Piper, saying that he was talking about using Piper to do his dirty work. This goes all the way back to WrestleMania 1 and their feud that has been started from their loss there. So we get, some of that stuff, but it leads right into this Piper segment with Mean Gene Okerlund, where Piper replies by mentioning several different moments where him and Bob Orton were definitely friends. And he was doing things where he tried to get Lovely Lucy to go out with Bob for 14 months. And he said, how about the time I gave you a hat, Bob? And he brings in Don Morocco into this. And he calls Morocco Fat Albert of professional wrestling. And, that's a Piper promo. And I
liked it. Yeah.
Kind of a friendship thing. We see the threads of that happening today, since wrestling is about friendship and relationships. They're trying to weave it together to make it make sense for us, and at least I appreciate it.
Yeah, 14 months is a weird time frame to be like, you were with Lovely Lucy. You guys went out for 14 months. Like, what should call it a year? Well, we can estimate the other 2 months.
Call their baby. Like, how old's the baby? 16 months. Like,
16 months.
Say it's a year and change. Like, what are we doing?
It's about an Orton relationship. That's about how old it is.
Lovely Lucy, baby.
Yeah, love to call names. But yeah, this is. I bought you a hat. Like, come on, Piper's great, man.
Roddy Piper takes on Cowboy Bob Orton. This all sets the stage to have this match, and it's pretty damn quick. And this to establish Roddy Piper as this, this big field babyface right now. And Orton backs Piper into the corner, and Morocco is at ringside as well, trying to trip up Piper. Roddy Piper is one step ahead of it all, really overcoming all of it. And the ending sees Orton missing an elbow out of the corner, and he runs into Jimmy on the apron, who's trying to distract the ref. Jimmy falls off the apron. Piper then rolls up Bob Orton for the 3 count, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. And this was cut short according to IMDb and everything else according to it, because of the length of the previous matches. And I think they probably would have given it more time on other cards, but it was the nature of they had to fit a lot in this card, and we still have other matches to cover. But Piper would still have to kind of deal with Adrian Adonis. That's going to happen here, and we're going to get the payoff of that feud at WrestleMania 3, and we're seeing the seeds planted there that we're continuing to see. And we mentioned long-term building. It's quite evident here.
Yeah, 100%. It's like it was not a terrible match for how short it was, but it definitely needed a little bit more time to breathe. It felt like, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I could watch Piper work all day long, so I got no complaints about it.
So we have a tag team bout here. The Killer Bees, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair taking on the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, with, Jimmy Hart in their corner. So it's interesting to see Jimmy Hart with the Harts. It's just, I guess it's the last name thing. But this match is a pretty awesome tag match. And I got to say the depth of, I was very surprised when I saw the Killer Bees out there, and I understand their names and they know they got LGNs, all that stuff, that they're a big piece of the tag division. And watching Bret Hart at this early onset in 1986, you could see superstardom in him. And also the characteristics of Jim Neidhart speaks volumes about the growth of the Hart Foundation going forward. And you can tell that these guys are going to be a big team going forward. And even the Killer Bees right here, I got to say, they were treated a certain type of way in the legacy of WWF and WWE. They don't get talked about enough, but they were fine-tuned. They were absolutely able to.
Impressed the shit out of me. Yeah.
100%.
I was like,
I thought
wow.
this was a great match.
I thought this was going to be a throwaway. When I see it, I was like, oh, Killer Bees. All right. But this was WWF's tag team division in the 80s is on fucking fire right now. This is great. This was some good wrestling, though. It was good to see Baby Brett and little Baby Jim working their match. And the Killer Bees were very impressive, man. I was thoroughly overwhelmed by how good of a performance this was. It was a fantastic match, man.
So they pull the move that we saw happen with the Bulldogs from the last show, where they switch up, and it winds up being the right legal man in, because Brunzell wound up being the legal man before the first switch. So even though Jesse Ventura is making a big deal in commentary that they did switch, and at least they're wearing matching tights. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing. Like, it makes sense for this team because you really can't tell the difference. And when a ref has his back turned, and you really can't keep track of the tags. But I think seeing some of the stuff here where, the double switch that holds a lot of weight here. And although the Hart Foundation were on the recipient of losing here, we saw another roll up, a lot of quick wins here on this card. So 3 count from the Killer Bees getting the win here. And if you think about the logic, though, they were trying to make it seem like they were cheating, that they were doing it. But if you follow it like that moving hat at a baseball game, or like put the ball and follow where the ball's going, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell was the legal man.
So it still worked out regardless.
Exactly. So
I thought it was good, though. Really fun. And even more, like, I wasn't mad that the Killer Bees beat the Hearts. Like, I was like, this was good, man. I really enjoyed the shit out of it.
So if Coco Beware cutting a promo, he said he wants to take Frankie with him to Russia. Just to disrespect people in Russia.
Because that's,
and that's to set the stage, taking on Nikolai Volkov with Slick in his corner. It's interesting, like, Slick is managing Nikolai Volkov. Match is quick. Coco Beware beats him in 2 minutes and 31 seconds. Essentially, Nikolai hits a backbreaker, and Slick is trying to tell him what to do next. Coco comes up behind with, you guessed it, a roll-up for 3, 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Coco Beware, I mean, in his prime, I know people think about him as a gimmick. Dude can go pretty well. And I think him hitting the missile drop kick off the top rope, the whole gimmick with, Frankie and stuff like that we just talked about before, works well, and fans were reacting to it.
No, he's got a good look, man. He's great in the ring. I would have loved to see what he would have been under different, like, moniker. Like, what could you have brought out to make Coco Beware the best Coco Beware we all wanted to see? And it's cool to see him work, but I wish I would have gotten to see him in, like, an ECW or that kind of realm, because I'm sure he would have been fan freaking tastic.
Yeah, I mean, the theme song was always so catchy. People always reacted to it, and anytime the music hit, he got a great pop. And I mean, this is a quick match here, and we lead into another quick match, which is, I guess, quote, our main event. Well, before that, we have a Hogan promo where he just references the Bobby Heenan stuff, where he wants to make it clear that no matter who he puts in the way in the Heenan family, that Hulkamania is going to live forever. We get that for really the first time, like Hulkamania being said is going to live forever, and it's really catching on here. The Hogan shtick is full on going forward now, so we have Hogan as we know him. This is like the Hogan we know and maybe love, maybe don't love, but this is
we're getting there. Yeah, it's before the tape release from Bubba the Love Sponge with him and Eve. Eating apples with Jake the Snake. Yeah, this is we're filling out the Hogan tree.
So our main event here, or last match of the night, I should say, is Magnificent Don Morocco with Mr. Fuji taking on Dick Slater, 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
Oof.
And as I mentioned before, Dick Slater, it was a big deal elsewhere. He's a lower mid-card face here, and he gets disrespected by Don Morocco. Pretty much spots that are just really unimpressive. Slater slips out of an airplane spin. He rolls up Morocco. We see that move finish off a lot of people, but he gets a quick 2 count. And Slater gets tripped up by Fuji, allowing Morocco to clothesline for the clean 3 count. Quick squash to end the night. And Mr. Fuji is the difference maker here for Magnificent Morocco. And that's how Saturday Night's Main Event ends here. And they kind of lead us out with the music and the credits, all that good stuff, the presentation. But as far as, again, similar feedback I have, maybe if you would have ended the night with the Killer Bees match because it's a work rate match, I think the structure should be your biggest match of the night, get the most eyes on it, and then end the night with the best match of the night. But I think, like you said, maybe people were just like, they expected everyone to be sleeping by the time the last 2 matches come on. Yeah,
and I mean, at that point, if you're sleeping for Morocco, or Coco Beware, I'm sure you were asleep for the Killer Bees. You know what I mean? So like, where's the fine pitch of printing out this the show lineup? So I wish they would go into the format like we were saying. We put the big match last, because even for us rewatching them, and once you get past a certain point, you're like, the rest of the show is not going to matter. You know what I mean? And like you kind of feel it already. I'm in the vibe, but like the Killer Bees was amazing. End the show on a high note. Don't end it on a shit show.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with just following live programming. That like I said, no one's going back and watching Monday Night Football or going back and watching any sporting event. They figure it's a one-off, so the structure doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any sort of Coliseum video. It doesn't matter. It's going to be existing on a one-off, and they couldn't foresee what the future would hold as far as rewatch value, and that's probably part of it. But on this card, I mean, there's some really good stuff. I mean, obviously Savage and Roberts stole the show, and the Hearts and Bees matches were really good. While the Piper and Orton match to me was short because of the lack of time, it had enough to it that kept you involved. And the promo before it, and just Piper being Piper, the fact that we had 2 work rate matches on the Saturday Night's Main Event left me very satisfied. And then pair that with the larger than life personalities. This was a really good watch. Definitely worth going back and checking out.
No, 100%. This is night and day compared to the first Saturday Night's Main Events that we've covered here, and then getting to here. I mean, it's like a completely different show. It's less hokey. There's more wrestling going on. There's good wrestling going on. It's not just, putting matches out there for the sake of matches. We're actually getting some badass stuff like the Bulldogs and Killer Bees and the Hart Foundation. Like this is good shit, man.
So let's go to the Chaser, and we're going to pick our favorite match or segment from the last 2 episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event. Let's get to the Chaser.
The Chaser.
Ooh. All right, Mike Belcaster. We had 2 action-packed episodes of Saturday Night's Main Event. And it's going to be hard to pick here, but let us know your favorite piece of these 2 episodes.
Well, outside of the tag team wrestling, because that's my highlight of the week, I'm giving all my love to Jake Roberts and Macho Man. I really, really enjoyed that match. I thought they both looked great. Very, like, even the double disqualification made sense to me, and it was done in a good way. Like you were saying, the ref bumps, man. It was nice, but it was a very well tuned match. Also wanted to give some love to the Dragon, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. It was good shit, man. Very, very well done. I thoroughly enjoyed both episodes, but that's my stands off from it.
So I know we gave the flowers to the matches before, but I definitely want to recognize the 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championship. The Bulldogs defeating the Dream Team. I thought it was a great match. Yeah. But also looking at, you mentioned Randy Savage and Jake Roberts, double DQ, 10 minutes long. Definitely an awesome watch. And then, go down the list too. As we mentioned, the Killer Bees defeating the Hart Foundation. The best part about this match is I'm watching it. It caught me by surprise. You mentioned before you thought it was going to be one of those like throwaway matches. Like, all right, we're going to get some guys over here. These guys went out there and worked harder than anyone else on the card, and they went out there and showed why this tag division is stacked. This tag division is one of the better tag divisions in the history of the company. And I know that throughout the history of wrestling, we look at tag wrestling, there's ebbs and flows about when it's being emphasized, but it's clear right here that the tag division means something because we have a great 2 out of 3 falls match for the titles the night before or the episode before. And then we have this awesome match that doesn't have any titles at stake, but they go out and crush it. There's a lot to be said about the tag division here. It means something.
No, 100%. So a big shot towards tag team wrestling this week, man. I thoroughly enjoyed both big showcased matches. It was a fun time.
With that being said, let's close the tab. The lights are coming on the bar. We got to get ready, enjoy our Friday night, get our weekend started here. Let's close the tab.
Closing the tab.
All right, as the lights come on the bar, you thought it was an 8. She's really a 2. Final wrap up here. Next week's
name's
show
still
will be
Eve, though.
5. What was that?
I said her name's still Eve, though, so there wasn't that bad of a night.
Next week's show will be episode 5 of season 5, airing on 9/22/23. Again, we're going to be covering 2 Saturday night's main events. We're going to cover the 9th and 10th edition. And 9th one being from January 3rd, 1987 in Hartford, Connecticut, headlined by the WWF World Championship on the line, Hulk Hogan versus Paul Orndorff in a steel cage. And then the 10th edition will be March 14th, 1987 from Detroit, Michigan, headlined by the WWF Intercontinental Championship on the line, Randy Savage versus George the Animal Steele, and a 20-man battle royal. So we're right into 1987, right on the build to WrestleMania 3, the finishing touches on it, really the beginning stages of it. I have a feeling we're going to see some very memorable stuff outside of just the match work. We're going to see a lot of the backstage promos that the build to Andre versus Hogan is certainly going to be something very interesting to watch. Such an influential time in WWF, really establishing who they are as this powerhouse. Very important moments in history that we're seeing here, Belcaster.
Yeah, no, I'm thoroughly enjoying this ride way more than I was expecting. And I mean, we're only just getting started. We got, 15 episodes, 16 episodes, or not 14 episodes down to go right now. So I'm fucking stoked, man. It's going to be a great time. Loving it.
So as far as shilling goes, tomorrow night, you guys can catch me in Deer Park, New York, for Remarkable Wrestling Presents Own the Night. We got the Motor City Machine Guns in town, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley. We also got the Bulldozer, Matt Tremont. We got the Young Prodigy, Marcus Mathers. We also have, who else do we got? Also, Kevin Blackwood's going to be on the card, taking on Desmond Cole for the Remarkable Championship. It's going to be a great night of wrestling in Deer Park, New York. So make sure if you're watching this by the sound of my voice, go to www.remarkablewrestling.com or go to @remarkable_wrestling on Instagram. Buy your tickets. You're not going to want to miss the event. It's going to be a great night of action. So make sure if you see me, come say hi. I'll have turnbuckle stickers in my fanny pack. Carry it all the time. I have merch. I got the trading cards. I got the 8x10s. Thank you for everyone that came out to VPW Sanctified and said hi. It was a great night of wrestling. Shout out to Desmond Cole and Leo Sparrow, who had an absolutely killer I Quit match for the New York State Championship. But yeah, also check it out. Brace for Impact next week. Wrestling Tonight, covering all of the things in wrestling and, everything else. Turnbuckle Tavern. What else you got, Belcaster?
Shit, man. Fig Night. Fig Night. I'm always doing fun stuff. We had a great week this week. Tom had to take a hiatus, but I got to open up all of my new shit, all my new AEW figures, the new exclusive Danhausen. Yes. Oh, he's very evil, very nice, very white right here. But yeah, I got some card breaks going on. We had a really good time. You got some figures. It's been great, man. And also shout out to the Dream Man, Freems, killing it over at the wrap up the last 2 weeks, man. I know I've been a little sparse on my visits down at the wrap up because I've been busy, but Freems has just been crushing it, man. The guy deserves all the flowers in the room, man.
No, I agree, man. Freems has been crushing on the wrap up show, and as I said in the Tavern chat, dude deserves to be recognized because his passion is contagious right now for the AEW product. And make sure you guys check out everything else we have here at the Turnbuckle Tavern. We're giving you guys content 6 to 7 times a week, audio, video you're asking for. Check us out on Twitch. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees, pick up a shirt. Make sure you guys support us any way you can. Go to theturnbuckletavern.com. Follow us at Turnbuckle Tavern on Instagram. Get us to 11,000 followers there. That'd be greatly appreciated. Support everything we do. It's all for the love of pro wrestling. And check out all the other stuff we got going on. Rodan's been crushing it. Check out the other people in the Pod Foundation, the Extra Cooler crew over there. Chick Foley dropped a great episode of a Chicky Quickie, I believe they dropped, and also open mic with Marco. I'm going to be on that show with him coming up soon. We're coming up with a date, so I get on there and have a conversation with Marco. I love what he's doing with that presentation.
Likewise, man. Hell yeah.
Everything has just been, so amazing here as we grind through this awesome wrestling calendar where the news cycle moves so fast. But honestly, this is going to be the best year yet for the Tavern coming up. 2024 is going to be such an amazing year for the Tavern as we continue to grow. And let's not look past the rest of 2023 because we got a lot of good wrestling left on deck for us, dude.
Yeah, it's not even October yet, man. It was so much shit happened in just 2 weeks between All In and All Out. Just imagine what we got for the rest of the year. So you never count your chickens until the clock strikes midnight at December 31st.
Because those chickens might put you in a front chokehold because you want to use real glass. That's it.
Yeah, they use real eggs down here at the Turnbuckle Tavern.
Garrett wants to get this out. He's in my ear. I hear that you are in his ear. He's in your ear, something like that.
No, we don't use real glass unless we're swimming down at the beaches in the Bajas, okay? But let's wrap this good one up because we got a 20-man battle royal coming at us next week, and I'm going to be famished, Monsoon. So, Saturday night's main event, Shot of Nostalgia, Turnbuckle Tavern. You know the drill.